Hello everyone, Kaoz here, and welcome to another Oldschool Runescape video. If you've been living under a rock, Oldschool Runescape is set to have a new skill released by late 2024, of course if everything goes according to plan. I've made a few videos in the past about hints of the game getting a new skill, but I didn't make one specifically for sailing until it was certain we were getting it in the game. After all, making videos on something that isn't even guaranteed to pass is always a big question mark for me. And oh boy, a vocal part of the community surely made me think we were about to miss out on Oldschool Runescape's first new skill. In today's video, I want to go over what the game has gone through for it to finally see the release of a new skill, all the way back from its first few proposals, and up to present day, where we talk about what sailing might bring to the game. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe with notifications on, as I will be breaking down every single aspect of sailing when it comes out. Of course, it's going to take a while, but you can count on me to bring you the best ways to level up. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Oldschool Runescape's first new skill. In order to understand how controversial this update is to the game, we have to travel all the way back to 2014. OSRS re-released in early 2013, and at that point it was all about nostalgia and the players coming back to the game they all knew and loved from their childhood. This after RuneScape saw the introduction of the evolution of combat, and microtransactions were starting to make their way in the form of the Squeal of Fortune, which provided experience and gold for real money. Both of these were the straw that broke the camel's back for a ton of players. I say 2014 because this is when Jagex asked players if they wanted a new skill in the game barely a year into its lifetime. The first skill proposal was Artisan. We can summarize this as Slayer for scaling. You would go to an Artisan master, and they would tell you to gather or craft the resources for you to gain a chunk of experience in the new skill. This would bring new rewards like new food, new runes, and construction shortcuts, just to mention a few. As you can probably imagine, this failed because it got about the 59% positive votes. 1, because the poll itself made the skill sound boring, and 2, because at this point the concept of anything new coming into the game was a big no in a lot of players' eyes. After all, you're playing a vintage version of the game we played years ago, so changing that was a big no. Only a year later, Jagex comes up with a new skill proposal, and it is sailing. And yes, sailing has been proposed in the past, but not like we know today. This was relatively inspired by an April Fool's joke, but also the mystery of a seemingly new skill cape found in concept art released for RuneScape during previous years. Jagex even proposed the level unlocks and explained how the skill would be trained. As it's probably obvious, the first iteration of sailing also failed, and it was clear that, although some players were itching for a new skill, it wasn't something the majority wanted. Joke's on them though, because a lot of things in today's iteration of Oldschool Runescape were inspired from sailing and its potential content if it made it into the game. This includes Zenyte Jewelry, Fossil Island, and even Chambers of Xeric along the new prayer unlocks. Players would have to wait a whopping 5 years for Jagex to bring up the introduction of a new skill for the third time. But now, JMods put a lot more effort into presenting how the skill would work for players to know exactly how it would help the game. Warding was the next attempt for Oldschool Runescape to see a new skill added to the game, and the way Jagex put it was, think of what smithing is for melee and crafting to ranged. Warding would bring a new wave of magic armor and even ways to make existing armor for experience. Of course, it would have a lot more depth to it than simply buying materials and processing them for experience. But in my opinion, this is what players saw and automatically made them go like, okay, we don't really want another bank-standing buyable skill, which to be fair, makes a lot of sense. This was my very first time seeing something like this, as I started playing Oldschool Runescape in 2018. Prior to Warding, I knew the game had tried to introduce a new skill, so I was extremely excited to get even more enjoyment out of the silly point-and-click medieval fantasy browser game for children. My excitement was quickly shut down, as Warding failed to pass the 75% threshold needed to work on new updates. The worst part about it was that Jagex put so much time and effort into the proposal, that even JMod said that it was getting a little discouraging thinking of fresh new ideas for a new skill, knowing part of the community was just going to vote no. Despite a large amount of players wanting a new skill in the game, the opposition was still too large, so the concept was once again put on hold. In October of 2022, Jagex saw the release of a developer block that would make a few people scratch their heads. The threshold for polling questions to pass would go down from 75 to 70%, and the roadmap for new updates would change a little bit. The 70% vote to pass an update will be crucial later on. The reason for reducing this value is because fewer than 6% of the active members vote on polls, and Jagex aimed to quote-unquote give more power to the players. Additionally, the roadmap refers to a new way of working on updates to save JMod's time in case the community wasn't too excited about a piece of content. Prior to this, and like you saw with the previous skill proposals, the idea was to work on an update to be almost ready for release, and then poll it to the players. This means that if the poll didn't pass, it would literally be time wasted. The new approach takes things much slower, and instead offers a general pitch to the players. If we like it and it passes the poll, Jagex would continue working on it to show more, and then polish the details to have it almost ready for release, granted it passes the final pitch. Of course, this is a lot easier said than done, but it shows that JMods were learning how new content should be pitched to avoid having big releases almost ready, only for the players to vote no, and not passing that 75% threshold. A lot of people were upset at this, but looking back at it, I wonder how many updates failed to make it into the game, because they were between 70 and 74% for that passing vote. I made a cool video on that which you can check out after this. So, now that you know a little bit about the history of new skills in OSRS and the controversial polling changes, let's continue with the core part of the video. In December 2022, Jagex held a livestream called the Winter Summit. They would announce exciting new updates for the first half of 2023, and some that would see the release much later. But they just wanted to show what was coming. Along the Secrets of the North, Forestry, and the Desert Treasure 2, Mudhusky and Elena came into the stream to announce the potential release of a new skill in Oldschool Runescape. What was it? Well, they didn't even know. Following the roadmap shown earlier, the main idea of this approach was to ask players, do you want a new skill, yes or no? This to avoid having another situation like Warding, where JMods would work on a proposal for months, only for it not to pass. This time, things were much simpler. Is it time for Oldschool Runescape to get a new skill? The 4 pillars of a new skill and its design would go as follows. Is it a healthy addition that's deeply rooted into the game? Does the skill provide meaningful progression? Does it appeal to the majority of players to avoid making it restrictive? And finally, is it engaging and enjoyable to train? This is what JMods hope to follow in order to offer something that the majority of players would be happy with. Shortly after the announcement, a poll went live into the game, and it had one simple question. Should a new skill be added in the game? Yes, no, or skip question. I'll be honest and say I didn't expect for this to pass, even with a new 70% threshold. But only a few days later, the community was met with an astounding 80% positive vote, making it one of Oldschool Runescape's most answered polls to date. The time was finally here to add a new skill, of course under the new guidance and community feedback. In March of 2023, Jagex uploaded a video showing not 1, not 2, but 3 different skill pitches: Taming, Sailing, and Shamanism. In short, Taming was a way to have different animals follow you around and to train them to use their abilities to aid you in your adventures. Sailing would make use of ships to open the entire ocean and offer new areas, resources, and skilling methods to mention a few. And finally, Shamanism was the surprise pitch, which had you gather resources in the spirit realm to infuse it into existing gear and give it more of a punch. The positives about each one was that Taming would give us more followers to open up brand new areas in the game and offer progression for each one to make it feel rewarding. For Sailing, I mean, just look at the amount of water in the map. The potential for new additions in the game would be quite literally endless, both on land and underwater. For Shamanism, you would have been able to upgrade your gear to give it new passive effects and a little bit more depth to Oldschool Runescape's turn-based combat system. On the other hand, the bad thing about each one is that Taming sounded tedious and basically like Summoning reworked. A lot of people didn't like how Sailing sounded because it could literally be an individual activity instead of a new skill, and for Shamanism, well, no one likes gathering skills. And if you do, you probably ate glue in elementary school. Jagex planned to see which was the more popular one, to continue with community feedback and the pitches. Of course, to polish it to a point where players would be able to see the full scope of the skill and how it would impact Oldschool Runescape long term. In April 2023, the next poll closed and Sailing beat Shamanism by around 600 votes, with another historic poll participation of 178,000 people. Taming got around 40% of the votes, and the 12.5% of voters said that they didn't even want a new skill in the game. A lot of people wondered if Sailing and Shamanism would be put up against each other to finally decide who the winner would be, but surprisingly enough, that was not the case. Jagex would continue writing about Sailing, going slow and steady with community consultation. This is also around the time where the new skill Discord was open, which had people give feedback on all 3 skill pitches, and of course focus on Sailing once it won the poll. I'll come out and say that I wasn't Team Shamanism, but sailing also gave me a lot of hope. Over the next few months, Jagex would release many videos on their YouTube channel explaining things like navigation, core gameplay, rewards, and integration to see how it would interact with the entire game. This all culminated in one final video going over all the important topics as a summary to prepare us for Judgment Day. In August of 2023, we would see the Summer Summit, which was another livestream announcement. This, of course, going over important updates for the rest of the year, and a little teaser about what's to come in early 2024. Along Leagues 4 and another Zaya expansion called Valamore, it was time for the community to decide. Will sailing be making its way into Oldschool Runescape? We were about to be met with the single biggest decision in the history of the game. A Giga poll went live shortly after, and oddly enough it had every single topic covered in the Summer Summit. I say odd because sailing was question number 6, and having the single biggest question in arguably the history of the polling system just casually sitting there was a little bit weird. I think this was a big enough decision for it to have its own poll, but that's a story for another video. So, it was finally time to decide, and Pokemon go to the polls. Is sailing coming to Oldschool Runescape? Well, with a barely 72% positive votes, the answer was yes. A lot of people celebrated on social media, but the opposition was extremely vocal for 2 reasons. 1, why was sailing not its own poll? And 2, people were speculating how Jagex lowered the passing threshold from 75 to 70% to prepare for something like this. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can pretty much see where those people are coming from, but 72% and even 70% of the active community is still a huge amount of people. Of course, considering a lot of them might have also used their alternate accounts for adding yes or no votes. The announcement on Twitter went absolutely bonkers, especially for people that were against the vote. I'm not here to put no voters in a negative light, but as expected, a lot of accusations started going around, most of which were based on the previous 2 statements. Regardless, with this crucial poll passing, the answer was clear. Oldschool Runescape is getting a new skill, potentially by the end of 2024. So with all this background and history behind a new addition to the game, how is it actually going to play out, and how will it change Oldschool Runescape? When I make videos with the phrase, will change forever, it is true for a lot of topics. Guardians of the Rift, the Hunter Guild, but with the addition of sailing, we can safely say that Oldschool Runescape is indeed changing forever. Now, we still need to keep in mind that community consultation will keep going every step of the way to ensure players are happy with sailing and what it has to offer. Of course, this means that polls can still be sabotaged, and if players vote no on specific additions and rewards, Jagex's roadmap could be a double-edged sword, and they could be indefinitely locked into a specific step of the development for God knows how long. Even if this is the case, I'm sure it won't go for too long, but you never know. So, just like the Hunter video, I am going to take a few minutes to give my closing thoughts and overall opinions of sailing, how it will change the game, and maybe people who are for and against a new skill. Now, the very first thing I should say, like I mentioned in the scripted part of the video, is that even though I was Team Shamanism, I am still pretty excited for what sailing could potentially bring to the table. Now, I know that I am in a, I would say, different position, or like, I don't want to say privileged, but, you know, I am in a different position that I would say most of the community. And the reason for that is because I'm a maxed player, and right now I'm doing things like, you know, maybe a couple of bosses or pet hunting. There's not a lot for me to do in the game. So, because I like RuneScape so much and I enjoy things like, you know, new content or leagues that's coming up in November, I am super excited for sailing because I just cannot wait to see how much of an impact it's going to have in the entire game. And I say I am in a different position because being a maxed player, then as soon as I unlock a sailing level with a new island or something new to do, I'm going to be able to do it right away, not limited by mining levels, construction, fletching, woodcutting, or anything that the new islands are going to offer when the skill is released. Now, of course, for the average player that's still not done with, you know, bossing, PVMing, skilling, or even has a couple of 99s, the idea of adding a new skill might sound boring, but hear me out. So, what happens if right now you have all of the training methods for all of these skills that you still have to attain a goal, or even get to 99? Well, what about sailing? Sailing could potentially give you new content to make maybe things like gathering skills a lot, I would say, more bearable, because it's no secret that I do not like gathering skills. So also, when it comes to PVMing, you know, we could have new islands. Jagex themselves even said that there's currently maybe some ideas to have for raiding in the ocean, so that is going to be absolutely massive. So, despite of what you think in the game, and what sailing might potentially, bring to the table, I think there's going to be something for every single person to be happy with, and the different ways to train the skill are going to be pretty massive in terms of how people are going to find their own, footing, and, how they're basically going to be forging their own path. If you haven't watched those Jagex videos of the summary of sailing, I definitely recommend you check them out, because there's going to be, I believe, 4 different ways to train them, and all of them are going to offer something for, each player, and of course, if you do all of them, it is just going to make it a lot better. Now, when it comes to the negative part of it, why do people not want a new skill in Oldschool Runescape? Well, at this point, I don't really think it's nostalgia. I would basically say that it's just giving people more to do. You have to keep in mind that the average player base of this game is now, anywhere between 23 and like 30, 32 years old. People with working jobs, families, multiple things to do. And the more things that we have to do in this game to feel, kind of quote-unquote efficient, it's just going to turn a lot of people off. Like, if you have sailing and, you give people these huge pieces of content, they go like, okay, I can only play 2 or 3 hours a day, and I'm gonna have to do this to unlock something like hyper efficient, then that's not really like my cup of tea. And I completely understand that, but it's just, in my opinion, you just kind of have to let the game evolve. It is no secret that I am a little biased on this topic. I have always wanted a new skill in the game, all the way since Warding. Even if it was not sounding like great in my opinion, I still voted yes for Warding because I just wanted to do more things in the game. And even back then, when Warding was proposed, I was not maxed, and I was like, if it comes to the game, then that's just one more thing I need to do. So when it comes to also another negative part and all of the, people that voted no, that were going, a little crazy on social media, I'm gonna say this, that could be taken the wrong way, but we all have to understand that this game is worse than any drug that we can come in contact with. Like, you see Walter White, brother, his stuff doesn't have anything in Oldschool Runescape, right? I'm pretty sure that people saying that they're gonna quit if a new skill comes into the game, enjoy your break, enjoy your 1 or 2 week break, you're gonna be back in this game. I'm pretty sure we all know that this is worse than, I'm not even sure if I'm gonna get demonetized on YouTube if I say the name of a substance, but even if you are, the #1 person against the new skill, I think we can all agree that the people who say that they're gonna quit because of this new addition, you might quit for a bit, but I think we all know how the game works. You don't really quit, you only take extended breaks. The final thing I want to talk about is what is the potential content that might be coming into the game. There's just like so much potential for every single new skill to be expanded, I would say, and a couple of people might be saying, well, you don't really need sailing for that to happen, but it would just make it a lot better, right? So you can have islands where you can chop new trees, you can mine new rocks, you can make new bars to upgrade your ship, you can have new monsters that drop new seeds to make new potions to go to this new area, you can upgrade your ship with fletching, construction, smithing. It's just like, you can have another island where you can fish new creatures or even make new food, cook them. Literally every single skill can, be put into the mix. Unlike taming and shamanism that were, in my personal opinion, didn't really sound like they could be integrated, globally into the game like sailing. And like I said in the scripted part of the video, the amount of ocean in the game is just like overwhelming for us to like, come up as a community with new content. And of course, Jagex bringing the best ideas to the table. Of course, I believe this is going to be the last video on sailing I would do until there's like some huge news, or even until the release, because I'm super excited for it. And of course, as soon as it drops, I'm going to be maybe not racing to 99, but I'm going to be taking it slow and steady to teach you boys and girls how to get it to 99 and show you that sailing is really not that bad. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I want to give a massive thank you to all the channel members. Your support is absolutely insane. The wife, the puppy, and I cannot thank you enough for it, and it just basically keeps me going every day. If you want to join the list of legends, go ahead and click the join button below, and of course check out all of the perks and rewards you can get out of your monetary pledge in the videos and the live streams, and of course in the Discord. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, the next guide is going to be 1 to 99 Melee in preparation for 1 to 99 Slayer, the final guide on the revamped series. Thank you very much for watching, and of course, let me know what you think of sailing in a comment below. And if you made it this far, then of course, I'm going to be reading all your feedback. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have a beautiful day, have a beautiful week, and I will see you then. Peace.